had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire wrong. So then I'm doing IT, and when I go to plug the servers in, they become sentient, and they won't let us access our network unless we forward their chain emails and memes to more and more and more people, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant finds and invites best-fit candidates to apply, so you can discover talent you may have missed. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Welcome to The Case For with Chris Cox, that pretend procedural that is set not in the court of last resort, but rather the court of the Disney World Resort. This is the podcast where theme park expert Len Testa and mind reader Chris Cox regularly debate about some of the more trivial aspects of vacationing in Orlando, which makes visiting here either a complete joy or an absolute misery. Anyway, I am the less than honorable James Robespierre Hill, and I will be presiding over today's proceedings. And after hearing Chris and Len's arguments, I will then render my verdict. All verdicts are final, unless, of course, they're not. Which means that we'd love to have you, the listener, eventually weigh in with your thoughts on these not-so-weighty matters.
If I may interrupt you, Your Honour, I don't know if you can see from your lofty position up there on the bench, and you might not be aware of this, but down here in the courtroom, there's about 3 inches of standing water.
Yes, I am well aware of that water, Mr. Cox. I myself turned the spigots on.
Yeah, that's probably what I was afraid of. Is there an actual reason you're flooding the chambers? It's not insurance fraud, is it?
Actually, no, but let's put a pin in that idea and circle back on that for later.
Okay, Your Honour, the water, why?
Another judicial opportunity has just come up. The U.S. Figure Skating Association recently reached out. They're holding nationals in St. Louis this year, and it turns out they're short a few judges.
Okay, all right. Well, part of me's happy because I was worried you were trying to turn this into Jim Hill's Bayou Adventure. But how does all of this factor in with the flooded courtroom and the ice skating championships?
Well, I figure if I got a little ice time, I could then volunteer my services. You know, Chris, ever since I was a little judge, I've always dreamed of colluding with the Russians, awarding a silver medal to a skater from the Soviet bloc who really didn't deserve it.
Right. Okay, a lot to unpack there. We're not going to. But mainly, big thing, Judge, Your Honour, you need ice. For ice time. Ice. This is water. It's just wet. Mm-hmm. And also, while I'm at it, where's Mr. Testa? Where's Len? Why am I the only person standing here wet in a damp pair of shoes?
Len, ironically enough, I sent him out for ice. Also a Zamboni, whichever is handiest. One way or the other, we'll get all of this H2O to eventually stiffen up.
All right, so if Len's not here today, can I make my exit, dry off, or at the very least, can I go to higher ground?
Interesting that you bring up exits. Now, is what I've heard previously correct, that you, over the course of your lofty career in entertainment, you have managed to visit every single Disney theme park around the planet, with the exception of Shanghai Disneyland?
Your dossier is correct. Yep. And actually, I do hope to get to Shanghai Disneyland someday soon, if I don't drown in this water first.
All right. Well, then you're the man I want to talk to today, because over the course of today's court session, I actually want to pick your brain in regard to the entrances at the Disney parks around the globe. Which of these you might believe is the most successful?
All right, and entrances, what are you meaning by that?
Well, I like Main Street U.S.A. in the original Disneyland park in Anaheim, how one comes into that theme park under the train station, and you're in Town Square looking at Sleeping Beauty Castle looming off in the distance. And
Yes. The beautiful Main Street. You're surrounded on the left and the right by all the shops and the services that you can go into and make use of as you enter the park. And then you can go into again and make use of as you exit the park.
there we go. I mean, you grab Starbucks on the way in, you shop for souvenirs at the Emporium on the way out. And given that you've experienced all of these entrance complexes and retail corridors, save one.
Are you going to ask if I've got a favorite?
Well, conversely, is there an entrance complex retail corridor at a Disney theme park that you feel really doesn't work or doesn't work as well as it should?
Yeah, this is a good question. All right. And you know what? In fact, this kind of makes up for the soggy socks.
I try. All right. Well, let's start with the theme park entrance that, for me personally, doesn't work the way the Imagineers, I think, hoped it would. And that's the Oasis at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida. Now, you've experienced this, right?
Yes. This is the park. Obviously, Animal Kingdom is a beautiful park, but this is the park where the entrance is sort of hidden, right? Once you go into the park, it takes a while as you meander and walk through. There's some beautiful kind of animal expositions. Yeah, they're doing some exposition. They're talking about the future of a story. Exhibitions as you go through, and then the trees grow, and eventually you kind of turn a corner, and suddenly it's there in front of you, the bridge and the tree of life.
And you've nailed it in one. But that's the thing. The Imagineers did this deliberately, created this vignette at the front of Animal Kingdom with the notion of this is not a park like Epcot or the Magic Kingdom or Hollywood Studios, that that you have to move through this differently and observe and patience will be rewarded, and that's not how Disney theme parks typically work, right?
Yeah, I always think of it as like a really intimate and small entrance. That kind of, once you get through, it feels like you're in kind of a zoo, really, which is sort of what it is, until you kind of turn that corner and you see the Tree of Life, and then you're like, we're in a giant theme park. We went to Animal Kingdom for early entry last year, and it was our second day, and we were staying at Animal Kingdom Lodge, and second day in Disney World from the UK means jet lag. So we were on the first bus to Animal Kingdom. In fact, we were there so early. Get off that first bus. I think I might have told this story before, but we got off the bus. It was still dark, and we were the only people there, and the security guard seemed concerned that we were there quite so early. And there was maybe 10 minutes of waiting before other people started to arrive. But we get lined up, and we get to the tap stars, and we're at the front, obviously. And then we go through, and there was a problem with one of my daughter's fingers no longer being the same finger as she had yesterday. So we had to suddenly change some stuff. So suddenly we were trying to get on Flight of Passage before the line split up, and now instead of being at the front of a line, we were like a little later into it. And this is where that entry frustrated me, because we eventually got the kids through the tap stars. I'm like, okay, let's go. We've got a plan. Over the bridge, turn left, wait there to get on Flight of Passage. But suddenly you've got a load of people all at the same time going through these windy pathways, and it's really exciting, but you're kind of just trying to get on with it, and it makes that that experience they're aiming for, which is very much a wonderful experience if you go to the park kind of mid-morning where it's nice and leisurely on a leisurely morning, but on a stressful rope dropping morning it just gets a bit annoying.
Oh, absolutely. And what's fascinating, at least to me, is there is the theme park that the Imagineers developed, which opened in April of 1998. But then, of course, you hand what you designed off to the people who actually operate the park. And as you just mentioned, there's this whole issue of we need to get people in as deep into the park as we possibly can, as quickly as possible. So, if you could hustle through the Oasis, that would be a really good thing.
It is a beautiful way to exit the park as well, though. That kind of transition from theme park to back into parking lot is really nice. But go on.
No, it's fascinating that you mentioned that, because, again, given the way that Animal Kingdom was originally designed, this was the first Disney theme park ever where they actually had to build giant signs that showed people where the exit was. See, do you remember those giant wooden birds at the top of that bridge that are effectively pointing like, your car is out here? Okay,
yeah, this is the way.
because that's the thing. When the park first opened, there was a bridge leading into Harambe, and there was a bridge leading into what would eventually be Asia. And these poor tourists remembered, when they came in early in the day, well, I came over a bridge and I walked around Discovery Island, and these poor people, would do 2 and 3 laps on the Tree of Life, around the Tree of Life. Like, is that where we came in? Is that where we go out? And eventually Disney was like, we got to build a sign. So
it could really have a sign. It does set its stall out there. I think, like in show business and in theater and a lot of the stuff I do, it's always, those first 5-10 minutes in a show or when you're on stage, they're your most important bit, because your audiences are going, in a theater environment, which I perform in, an audience is sort of going, all right, what is this thing? What's it going to be? Is it going to be good? Have I wasted my money? Have I not? And then other people I've bought with me going to enjoy it, all of that. So you're very quickly trying to set up your stall of this is what we are, this is what we do, as quickly as possible. And I think it's really successful in doing that at Animal Kingdom, because it really is different to any other Disney park, the way you enter it. And straight away you go, okay, this is a different experience.
All true. And let's face it, though, that, you don't have to do this in a castle park. Because, again, you come onto that train station and you're standing there in town square, castle off in the distance, and you're immediately, properly orientated, right?
Yeah, castle center. I'm looking at it. I know where I am the whole way through this.
Though, when we were pre-gaming a bit for today's show, you were mentioning that, that's not necessarily the case if, say, you first went to the Magic Kingdom in Florida and then made your way out to Anaheim?
Yeah, so I didn't get to Anaheim till I was sort of in my late teens, and I've been to Florida maybe 2 or 3 times by then. And there's a very weird thing when you first visit Disneyland, having visited Magic Kingdom as your park, and you go, and even if I had visited Disneyland Paris before then, and you're like, oh, is that it? Suddenly the castle feels like, is it further away than I thought? Oh, no, that is it. And it takes a bit of adjusting, and suddenly everything is on a much smaller scale, and it's cute. And that fact that it's original park is utterly wonderful. And you see how, that idea of like bigger isn't necessarily better. You can see how they've adapted over the years. And just like, a theater show grows over time and changes happen naturally, you can see all those things they've learned. I also remember as we kind of visited that park for the first time, it was also the same time as California Adventure had just opened, and they had that giant California outside the front in the Esplanade, and that was a whole different experience as well compared to having only visited Magic Kingdom and Disney World, where it's just, this is just Magic Kingdom. Suddenly you've got this big open space before you even get into the park. All
true. Though, speaking of big open spaces, if we could pivot for a sec to Tokyo Disneyland, where, again, what was interesting there is that when the Imagineers initially designed that park, they were anticipating that, we have the entire population of Tokyo that will be coming here. And, they created these giant walkways. I mean, you've been in that park, and, that space from when you come out from under, say, World Bazaar and the 1.5 miles then, till Cinderella Castle. I mean, I look at these and you figure, well, I guess Godzilla will come by eventually and want to visit the park. But speaking, though, of World Bazaar, though, I mean, I wanted to get your take on that theme park's entrance complex retail corridor. What's it? That's under a giant glass roof, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you sort of don't really notice it. I was looking back at photos today and was like, oh, yeah, we were under a glass roof. And I think I didn't notice it for a few reasons. I suppose, firstly, it being Disney Tokyo, you're up early to wait in the long lines to get in. And then as soon as the park opens, you ignore everyone saying don't run, and you just run through that area to get on Pooh's Honey Hunt as quick as you can. But it's, like we were saying about how Disneyland is so much smaller, and then suddenly the size of the Tokyo park, and that idea of like, I'm at the castle. No, I've got to now go through a couple of little extra steps, through a garden, through a roundabout, through a field, and then I'm there. It reminded me actually that of when I was recently in Portofino in Italy. And my only experience of Portofino had been the Portofino Bay Hotel at Universal. And it is, and I believe the story goes that it was designed because Steven Spielberg honeymooned in Portofino. Is that correct?
Yes. He and Kate Capshaw. Thank you for bringing up that story. Okay.
Yeah, so they honeymooned there. And it is an incredible replica. Going to the actual Portofino, you come in on the boat, as I did, and it looks identical. And I could literally look at the windows and be like, oh, that's the window that my bedroom was in. But the weirdest thing about it is it's tiny. And it feels like everything is double sized in the Universal Park hotel. And so all of those things, you go like, oh yeah, they've recreated it on a grander scale. It's like when you discover the Bellagio windows in Las Vegas. Each one of those windows is 4 bedrooms. You don't know that until you know that, but that also makes that building instantly feel smaller than it is, where the Portofino Bay Hotel is much bigger than the actual Portofino. But the attention to detail on that is incredible.
That's crazy. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, so sorry, I didn't even answer the question. Yeah, I like undercover because I'm naturally British, so I'm expecting rain. So it being undercover is good. I think it makes the reveal of the castle a more interesting thing. I think you don't get it there straight away. It builds that anticipation. And, I think Walt's always said that park design is like the start of a movie, right? You're slowly going into that world and you're transitioning there. And I think it does it in a different and successful way and keeps people dry and shaded and all of those things. I think, there's a lot of talk about the design for the Universal Park that's going to open here in the UK, and being undercover is going to be a much needed thing at certain points of the year, by which I mean most of the year.
Well, now, speaking of parks in Europe, we pivot now to Disneyland Paris, which, again, continuing the notion of, being dry and undercover. I wanted to talk about the Discovery and Liberty arcades that flank Main Street at that park. And you experienced those visiting there, right?
Yeah, there are these. So this is a really clever thing the Imagineers did, in that you've still got that beautiful Main Street, and it's a really beautiful Main Street, and that stupendously beautiful castle. But the awareness of it's Paris, so it's going to be rainy and snowy at certain times of the year. So either side, you've got these arcades, which are, long corridors really, but they're beautifully themed with all these kind of objects and paraphernalia in the windows to capture attention, and they're dry and they're warm. And I didn't know they existed for a first couple of times in Paris. So I'd walk down Main Street there in the snow, in the cold, going, oh, I wish I was in the warm. And then literally the first time I discovered they existed was in a summer. And I was like, oh, these would have been useful in December. And also, I had no idea they were different on either side. Both have a different theme.
They do. So, given that we were just talking about Disneyland Tokyo and now we're talking about Paris, I guess we should also talk about the thing that those two Disney resorts have in common. And, well, at least in case of one park at both of these resorts, you enter under a grand hotel, right? That there's the Disneyland Hotel in Paris, and then the Hotel Miracosta at Tokyo Disney Sea.
That's the one. Yeah, so in Paris, the first thing you kind of see is the beautiful gardens and the Mickey flower display. But then instead of seeing the castle behind that, you see the hotel, which has recently had a beautiful, beautiful refurbishment. They've done an incredible job of it. And then you pass under the hotel through the ticket styles, and you can buy your tickets there if you've forgotten the internet exists. And then you eventually come out from under the hotel once you've tapped through, and then you see the train station. And then you go under the train station, and then you see Main Street and the castle. And it's sort of similar size to the Disney World version. And I have a beautiful memory of deep in the olden days of the pandemic, we had a small window between the first and the second surge and lockdowns in the UK. It was October time, and we decided to drive to Disneyland Paris for a few days. So we drove from our house, jumped on the Channel Tunnel. We thought it was the safest way possible. We could keep our windows up. We just can stay in hotels. We don't really have to interact with anyone. We drove to Disneyland Paris. We got into the Newport Bay Hotel there. Anne-Marie was just turning 2. Aurora was just about to turn 1. So it was their first time going to a Disney park. And after those kind of months of being locked up at home, we saw that train station and then went under it and saw that castle. And then behind us at the top of the train station waving were all the characters there. And it fills me with goosebumps again, that kind of transition from what had been a very weird world that we'd lived in into that magical world of escape and fantasy has never felt more strong than that moment right there.
That's a great story. Wow.
Año Nuevo, los mismos Extra Value Meals en McDonald's. Ahora te puedes llevar 2 snack wraps y papitas y una bebida mediana por solo $8. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawái, Alaska y California y con entrega.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
If we might double back to something you talked about a little previously in today's show, again, when you start at Walt Disney World, with that Magic Kingdom, and then make your way out to Anaheim. Yes, you come onto the train station. It's like, oh, did they leave the castle in the wash? It's just, it's kind of itty bitty. But weirdly, for folks who have started out in California, that Disneyland is their home park. They actually talk about how they will get to Florida and find the scale of the Magic Kingdom, especially the Main Street and thereabouts, a little overwhelming. Did you see that at all or sense that at all?
Yeah, you can always sort of sense it at the busiest times, right? When that Main Street is full, it feels very full. Mm-hmm. And of course, you've got the shops that you can cut through in the Emporium, which help. But everything there, I always love Main Street, but my main memories always of it are just rushing through to get to the place I want to get to. And there's a memory that stirs, and there's this photo I cherish more than anything else of me, and I think I talked about this in a previous episode, of me and my family on an empty Main Street USA, and we were picked as a first family, which meant we got 5 minutes in the park before it opened, and they walked us through, and an empty Main Street is a sight to behold. It feels otherworldly. It feels very weird. It's kind of like when I see when I sort of, if I'm doing a show, before the curtain, before the house opens, there's always an announcement. It's normally, ladies and gentlemen of the cast and company of the show, this is your half-hour call. The house is now open. Please do not cross the stage. And just before that announcement, I cross the stage and take one last look at the calm before the storm, knowing it's about to be full on stage and full in the auditorium, hopefully, if we sold enough tickets. And it felt like that, the calm before the storm, as we were standing there, all the photo pass photographers kind of came out of a secret door and got ready to go, and then suddenly we were kind of halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way up Main Street, and the lady we were with who'd picked us as the first family said, turn around, and you just saw a horde of people coming towards you as their day of magic is about to begin.
Oh, that's a great show business related story. And speaking of show business, though, me personally, in fact, one of the things I especially love about Hollywood Boulevard at the theme park formerly known as Disney MGM is that, the Imagineers, when they were designing that place in the mid-1980s, they flat out admitted that they based the design of that theme park on the original Disneyland out in Anaheim. For example, the scale of the buildings along Hollywood Boulevard, or even just the length of the street from, say, the entrance at Disney's Hollywood Studios to the Chinese Theater.
That makes total sense now you say that. You can kind of feel that in your bones, weirdly, and you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, as it was explained to me, I want to say, what is it? It's the exact same distance from when, say, you come under the train in Anaheim, and the distance from there to the Chinese Theater is supposedly pretty much a match for when, you reach the hub and there's Sleeping Beauty Castle.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that feels totally right. And I suppose there's that strange thing as well with Hollywood Studios in that they added Sunset Boulevard at a later date. So kind of one of the big icons of the park is suddenly in a totally different direction to the center of the park.
And it's interesting you say that, because that, if you think about the end of Sunset Boulevard and you have Tower of Terror, which, that's the classic Disney design of the weenie that pulls you further into the park. Whereas if we look at Epcot, built in 82, I mean, that literally subverts the formula because, we have the weenie at the front of the park, Spaceship Earth.
Yeah, you get get there, you see it straight away. It's the first thing, and then there's a whole world, literally, of Showcase and Future beyond it. There's nothing. I remember as a kid, I've got one of my favorite parks now. But as a kid, I remember thinking of Epcot as just the park that I get like tired legs in, and you just walk around the lagoon because there's no thing really iconic to pull you back there other than walking around the world. And I think that's a very brave decision when they were designing that park as to how they were going to accomplish that.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is they walked away from that. It's like with again, the old the joke that Epcot stands for every person comes out tired, and so we then pivot to the MGMs of the world, or for that matter, Hong Kong Disneyland, which again proves that such a thing as being too faithful.
Yeah, Hong Kong Disneyland to me is the closest one to California. Certainly when I went, it was still the original castle before they upgraded it to the Castle of Dreams. Is that what they call it now?
There we go. Yep.
So we thought this was a perfect time to visit Hong Kong Disneyland. But we only had about half the day before we had to get to the airport. And we're like, well, I wanted to go on Mystic Manor as many times as I could and Grizzly Gulch. So we're like, all right, so we're going to get the train there. You get the monorail. And it's great because when you get the train there, you sort of get the train to sort of near the airport, and then you get the train from there into Disney. And that train is a Disney-themed train. There's Mickey things everywhere. And we got on the train, and I was expecting it to be quiet because the weather was going to be bad. And that train was full. And I was kind of stressing out, going like, okay, all right. So here's what we do. We do a normal plan. We get off. We kind of walk as quickly as we can. We go for it. We walk, try and get as close to the front as we can. We get on Mystic Manor. If we only get on that once before we have to go, I feel like we'll be happy. So we get off the train. We're within the groups of people. It's very busy. There's a lot of hustle and bustle. We're kind of trying to, dart our way, doing our London Walker style technique of being a London Walker. Get out of the way, slow people.
Okay.
And suddenly, I'm like, oh no, we've gone the wrong way, because everyone starts veering off to the right, and we're going ahead. I'm like, oh, so we stop, we turn around, and then I look, and I realise that's the staff entrance. And everyone is going into the cast member entrance, and there's literally just me and Helen, and that's it. There's no person there who has got up early on a typhoon day. And again, we're kind of at the park entrance for a good amount of time before other people turn up. And luckily, we get here, we get on all the rides before it starts raining, and we have a wonderful day. But that's a very different way to experience a park.
Wow, that's a great story. Okay. But again, to remind people, what was interesting about Hong Kong Disneyland when it opened in September of 2005 is that, at least when we're talking our entrance complex and retail corridor, to be specific, the chunk of the park that is made up of Main Street U.S.A. to the castle, it was pretty much a clone of what was done in Anaheim, though that was not originally the plan. Did you ever hear about what they wanted to do there, or?
Is this what they eventually did in Shanghai? Was that the plan?
Yes. So what was interesting is the variation on what they were going to do in Hong Kong. Now, what Chris is referring to is Mickey Avenue at Shanghai Disneyland. And what's fascinating about that is, instead of Main Street USA, they have, again, Mickey Avenue. And the idea is that this is the street where the Disney characters work, as opposed to Fantasyland, which is where they supposedly live. So you have stores and restaurants that are keying off of Mickey, Donald, the Three Little Pigs, Scrooge McDuck. You get the idea. But what they wanted to do for Hong Kong was it was a classic Main Street, only, for example, like the that retail block just past the Emporium. You could stand in the street and look up, and it's like, okay, so that's the Darling's house from Peter Pan, but it's next to beautiful. Cherry Tree Lane from Mary Poppins. And then the end of the street is Madame Bonfilme's mansion from the Aristocats. So it was all of these full-size buildings that you were supposed to know from classic Disney films. But in the end, it was the Hong Kong government that was paying for this, and they were like, yeah, that's nice. We would really like to go with something more tried and true. So could we go back to what, you guys did in Anaheim back in 55?
I mean, that's the tricky thing, right? Once you've got something that works, it's really difficult, more difficult than before, to come up with something new and different, because you go, well, this works, so let's do what works.
Well, now and now to bring full circle, earlier on you mentioned the entrance to California Adventure, out in Anaheim, which by the way, next month, Chris, celebrates its 25th anniversary.
Wow.
So, but you were talking about that with its giant, letters of California. Which, by the way, thankfully, when they redid the park, they actually got hauled off to the official California State Fairground, and they still exist. They're still out there.
I'm happy to hear that.
All right. But so when did you first get to experience California Adventure?
So I went just as it opened in its very first kind of month or so of operation, and remember getting, lots of photos by the sea, because obviously Chris. But the design, am I right in thinking it was designed to look like, because you had the monorail going over a small version of the Golden Gate Bridge and the California in front, that design was meant to look like the postcard shot where it says California and you see it behind you. Is that the idea?
Yes, but and it's so interesting that you grasped onto the postcard idea, because I've actually talked to a number of folks about the entrance, because face it no longer exists. It got redone as part of the reimagining of California Adventure in the late 2000 or the 2010s or thereabouts. But what they talked about was like, no, you don't understand that this was supposed to be the ultimate pop-up postcard. In fact, there's art out there, for example, of, well, it wasn't just that you could stand in front of a giant letter and, a giant C and get your picture taken. They were also supposed to be, like, for example, parasailing things set up where you could get your photo. I mean, it was going to be the ultimate Californian pop-up postcard.
I love that.
But in the end, it was a notion of, okay, we need to actually get this place open, and we need to stay on budget. And there's an old, saying, the project got nibbled to death by ducks. It was like, key details kept falling off of the table until it was fine. I mean, it had its lovely mosaic murals, Northern California, Southern California.
That beautiful sun I remember as well, with the fountain in front of it.
Yeah, but in the end, it was just one of these things where there wasn't, there was a lot there, but there wasn't enough.
It sounds like they're a bit, the Imagineers there were kind of ahead of their time in kind of creating these sort of pop-up photo opportunities. And now, you walk around London and there's shops you can go in where all it is pop-up Instagram photo opportunities in different routes. They're trying to accomplish a similar thing. It's a great idea.
And I have to ask, since you were there when when it first opened, what do you think now of the new retail entrance complex at California Adventure?
I like it. I do. I really like what they did to California Adventure, and I'm very happy I saw the original version of that park, because I think there was some really lofty ambitions in that idea of trying to make it something different. And I remember getting free tortillas going on the tour of that and the Golden Dream Show. But I love the fact Cars Land is there now, and I like the fact that weird Drew Carey ride is no longer there. But they're kind of Buena Vista Street. I've got memories of taking Anne-Marie in her little pushchair or her buggy or her stroller to translate as she's eating a Mickey thing and a Mickey kind of Rice Krispie cake, and we're walking up there and Mickey came out and got some photos, and it kind of, I remember thinking, as I go through that thought in my head, it combines quite quickly with Hollywood Studios. I'm like, oh yeah, it's sort of Main Street USA and Hollywood Boulevard crossed together and sort of splurged back out.
That's an excellent observation. Yeah, it's like those two entrance complexes had a baby.
Do you have a favorite? What about you?
Well, no. That's the thing.
I mean, favorite's a tough choice, right?
Well, that's the weird part. I love the original Main Street because, again, it's the park that Walt himself touched. But on the other hand, I really enjoy MGM for, because again, I'm I've been going out to LA since the 70s. And, I used to drive around the city to try to find all of these old buildings and studios and places where things were shot. And that's the thing. California, you live in England, I live in New England, places that have, respect. And it's like, that's an old building. We want to preserve it. And in California, it's like, that's an old building. We need to tear that down. We needed another, boba stand. And so it was lovely to have a place that, so many of the things that I loved about Hollywood Boulevard were in one place. And then to have them jump ahead with Buena Vista Street and create this sort of fantasy take on the Los Angeles that, Walt Disney encountered when he arrived, in town in the 1920s. It's a fun sort of marriage of those two ideas. Anyway, folks, Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing, your stories of your world travels here and getting to experience hear about your thoughts on, all these different entrance complexes at the Disney parks. And, hang on. That's my phone. Oh. Okay. It's Len? Yes? Oh, hang on. I get it. All right. Okay. All right. All right. That's unfortunate. All right. Thank you for your efforts on my behalf.
Well, what was all that about? What's unfortunate other than the souls in Ursula's song?
Well, it's kind of ironic given that we've been spending so much time talking about entrance complexes on today's show, because it turns out the Len's outside with the Zamboni, and it's a little too big to come through the front door of the courthouse.
Okay. So what are you going to do about all this water?
Not entirely sure. Maybe a metric ton of paper towels.
Yeah, I'll pop to the loo and see what I can find.
And with that as our somewhat soggy finale, another session in these hallowed halls, the court of the Disney World Resort, has now come to a close. My thanks to master illusionist Chris Cox for sharing his knowledge of the Disney parks today. His fellow would-be barrister, theme park expert Len Testa, will be back for our next show and will no doubt be wielding a mop or plugging in a humidifier between now and then. But until that episode posts and this place dries out, the case for Chris Cox is now closed. Thanks again for listening, and this has been the Less Than Honorable James Robespierre Hill, and this court will be back in session soon.